the end of the first half of the video, we've progressed so much, from listing down the chapters to dividing the whole course into smaller parts and building a whole new timetable for ourselves. At this point, you might have a thought: NCERT sample papers are enough for me acing the exam, or do I have to refer to any other material? Will the number of guides I refer to make a difference in my score, or if I just refer to the past year papers would do good? Do I have to memorize all the questions in that guide that I bought? Oh my god, so many questions, right? I've got you guys. The next study tip: how to refer to other materials like guides, sample papers and past year questions while studying. Or is there a need for it? I'm getting it answered. Yes. So the answer is yes. You need to refer to guides, past year papers and sample papers. It's a must. Though NCERT is the core material, obviously without referring to NCERT, you're not making any justice to this preparation. So NCERT is the core material, but there is a need for you to understand what the examiner wants from you through this exam. So there is a particular expectations that examiner has in you when he or she sets questions. So in order to understand the type of questions, the type of answers that you need to write for those, we need the help of guides, sample papers and past year questions. So let's dive into this question: how to refer. How to refer? Obviously, the core material, NCERT textbook should be read once or twice. If you're well read, you've already read the NCERT quite a few times or a multiple number of times, one time would do good. If you're not very sure of the content, read it twice or thrice. Fast reading would be recommended. Number 2, read questions from the part of the chapter. If you take chapter number 1, read all the questions in the guides that's available with you. Give it a quick glance. Understand what how each question is different from another. Okay. Now the third step. Find the questions that's relevant to the chapter that you've already studied in all the sample papers that you have. From the CBSE sample papers, the questions that your teachers gave, to the questions that your teachers have said in your exams that's already done throughout your school year should also be referred. Do not leave out any questions. Each and every question is very, very, very important. Now, you must have observed, read questions from the particular chapter in your guide. Let me tell you, this is something that you have to know. How do we, or what do we look for when we read questions? So, what do we look for? Number 1, keywords. The bold lettered words. I think in some guides they have already highlighted the keyword needed. It will fetch you marks in your exam. There are particular keywords for each and every question that invigilators or examiners look forward. So number 1, look for keywords. Without keywords, board is not going to be considering any of your answers. Number 2, structure of writing. The guides would have presented a particular structure of writing, how to present your answer. So it's very important to know how to present your answer, what's the flow, or how do we start and how do we conclude. So make sure you give ample attention to the structure of the writing. And in some guides, I must say that there are columns which indicate that mistakes made by students. So make sure you give a quick glance to all those mistakes that are already pointed out by the guides. Okay, and then read the summary that's given in the guide. Guides usually give a very concentrated form of definitions and events that happen in the chapter. So make sure while you're reading the questions, give a quick glance to all of these. Even read the summary. Make sure you don't miss out any facts which is highlighted. And now, this is something you have to always follow. We've got 15 days in hand and it's ample amount of time, but no time to waste. So make sure you do this in a quick method. Quick. That's all that you have to, that has to run in your mind while you do your revision. So make sure you read your text in a very fast method. Make sure you give a quick glance at the questions given in the guides, sample papers and past year papers. Do not memorize. This is a must. Do not memorize any of the questions that's there, because the exact same question will never come in the exam. Board papers are always, so the board questions are always changed. They change the words in the question, or the pattern of the questions, or the way they ask the questions. So never memorize, just evaluate the questions. Okay, so this is all. I think one more thing. While you read a chapter, the last step that you have to follow. Write a very short, concentrated summary, a running note. Summarize the entire chapter in a few lines, 5 lines, 10 lines, which contains the main events, maybe a main plot twist, or a main event that happened which changed the entire chapter's direction. Make sure you highlight all of them. So this is the end of this particular study tip. I'll summarize once again. NCERT is the core material. We need guides to understand what examiner wants from us. And how do we? NCERT textbook. Read all the questions from the particular guide. Then find questions from sample papers. What to look forward? Keyword. The structure of writing, most mistakes made by students, summary. How do we do it? In a quick method, and do not memorize questions. The 5th study tip: when do we have to practice sample papers? So practicing sample papers can give you immense amount of experience of how the actual board paper would look like. So when giving you a tip about practicing sample papers, I'll generally divide the entire board appearing population into 2. The people who love to practice part by part whilst revising, and the number 2 who loves to practice by doing it as a mock on the whole. So I must say both these methods are absolutely correct. It's your choice whether to do it part by part or as a whole. Now, a few things that you have to keep in mind while practicing. As I've already said, while looking at the questions, we have to look for keywords, because keywords can fetch you more marks. So number 1 thing that you have to focus again is keywords that's given. Then number 2, marking scheme, where all you get an extra point or where all you can get an extra mark. Like if you list an example or an illustration in your answer, will it fetch you another mark or not? Because if there is no mark for examples, you can probably quit stating an example, and it can fetch you more time for other questions. If an example could give you an extra point, then try to state an example. Then writing sample and knowing your mistakes. So writing sample is for the people who actually follow number 1, who practice part by part while revising. You should understand the way a particular answer is scripted in the answer script. Sorry, not the answer script, the answer key that's given for each and every sample paper. So make sure you give due attention to the writing sample that's given in the answer key. And moving on to the second, knowing your mistakes. So while you take the entire sample paper as a whole as a mock, make sure you correct your mistakes, you understand and evaluate them. So that's all for the 5th tip. Moving on to the 6th study tip. How many hours should one study? So on a rough calculation, 10 hours would be a sufficient amount of sufficient hours for studying. So the remaining hours, so if you have studied 10 hours properly, effectively, and with high productivity or even medium productivity, it's fine. The remaining 14 hours is in your hands. Out of them, 7 hours can go for sleep, and you've got other 7 hours for relaxation. See guys, if you organize your life properly, organize your day in an effective manner, you've got 7 whole hours for relaxation, like for your meals, your TV, if you want to listen to music, you've got ample amount of time, and then playing games, and what more you can add to your list. Now, one thing that you should note while studying for 10 hours is that 10 hours of just sitting in front of your book is not equal to effective progress in studying. It's just a waste of time. You should make sure that you sit effectively. So, whenever it's study time, get serious and let's study. So, make sure you're studying wholeheartedly, just like you wholeheartedly play, so that we've got equal amount of time for studies and equal amount of time for fun. So this is the quote I want to say: all work and no play is as boring as all play and no work. So that's it guys for the 6th study tip.